And all these years, it seems the further we move in time, the more atheistic the world is getting. Even among the Jews, there are many who don't even believe in the existence of God. There's a lot of atheism, and you know what is happening? Religion actually, as the world has become more civilized, as people would put it, religion is being seen in very negative light. In very negative light. Like, it precipitates violence. I mean, you know what has happened this week over in France? How many have heard of it in the news? You know what has happened in France, huh? Now, if I were to ask you, Brother Tenson, what happened in France? What has provoked what is going on? I want to hear how you explain it.
There was a man who was stabbed and was
beheaded. Actually, the teacher was beheaded. Huh?
Yeah.
The teacher was beheaded.
One was beheaded.
The other one was stabbed. Yes. Now, what caused that? A teacher was beheaded. A man was stabbed. My question is, what caused that? What led to that?
He mentioned about Muhammad.
Sorry?
He mentioned about Muhammad when he was teaching.
He mentioned about Muhammad. That is Brother Robert. That's what he knows about the story. The teacher mentioned about Muhammad.
He drew the cartoon.
Yeah, he drew the cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad, right? Yeah. Now, I wanted to illustrate here how an event can happen and can have misinterpretation to it. Okay? So Brother Tenson had an idea that, okay, he was stabbed, one person was stabbed, the other one was beheaded. So there's a large world population who knows, that's the only detail they know to the story. To say, oh, a Muslim has stabbed someone, beheaded someone. There's a whole lot of people, that is the only aspect of the story they know. I asked Brother Robert, he gave what he knows. He says, well, the person was stabbed, the other one was beheaded because they mentioned Muhammad. Now, you think when you mention Muhammad, Muslims will come on you? No, they wouldn't, isn't it? But now he has brought in what actually happened. Someone drew a cartoon of Muhammad. A teacher did that in the name of expressing freedom of expression, is it? Now, Muslims are very serious about what you mention, what you do about their prophet. They're serious about what they believe, all right? Now, this teacher obviously knows what happens when you draw images or cartoons of the prophet, because it's not the first time we are seeing such kind of acts which provoke this kind of reaction. So I don't believe the teacher didn't know what he was doing. But maybe he did not know it would bring about such kind of a reaction where he was beheaded. Now, my focus goes on to the president of France and what he responded about the situation. I was looking at Al Jazeera. I was looking at this thing on Al Jazeera. Let me just read to you what I read on Al Jazeera. It says, France has been shaken by the beheading of a history teacher earlier this month. The assailant had wanted to avenge the teacher's use of cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad in a class on freedom of expression. Now, let's look at how did President Emmanuel Macron, how did he respond to this? Okay, so I continue to read what is on the Al Jazeera website. President Emmanuel Macron has unveiled a plan to defend France's secular values against what he termed as Islamic radicalism, saying the religion was in crisis all over the world, prompting a backlash from Muslim activists. So, well, according to this news story, the president of France says the Islamic religion is in crisis all over the world. And Muslims are not happy with that kind of a reaction. And of course, you know, people are in Arabic countries, Muslim countries, they are boycotting to buy French products and all that because they're very upset with what he said. And I think it's Erdogan, the president of Turkey, okay, who issued a very strong statement saying the president of France, I think he needs something like a mental checkup or something like that. So you can see the kind of diplomatic, what do you call, tension this whole thing is causing. So he announced that the government would present a bill in December to strengthen a 1905 law that officially separated church and state in France. Now, this leads me to say this because there is a very big misunderstanding, I believe, about religion and violence. And first I need to mention that violence in all its forms, be it religious or political, should be condemned in the strongest possible terms, isn't it? Violence shouldn't have a place. But however, time and again, the West, when I say the West, I mean Europe, America, the West in its response to solve the problem seems to lack understanding of what is the underlying cause of this violence. There is a very serious misjudgment on that. And then out of that, you have people who actually start to hate religion in all its forms. They say religion is bad, religion is evil, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, whether it's Hinduism, and all that. Okay? So, people would still cite Christianity. You may be surprised to say, but has Christianity had some violence? Well, you just need to read history, okay? People go in history, they read about the Crusades. How many have read about the Crusades? The wars of Christianity against Islam, when they were trying to take Jerusalem back, as something to be owned by Christians, because Islam started occupying the Holy Land in Palestine. So Christians, under the leadership of the Pope, they started wars, the Crusades. So some people look into history and they bring up those things and say, religion in all its forms causes violence. Atheists like Richard Dawkins, they're so hard and very firm on that, And the question is, if we are to do a very critical analysis on this thing, is it true that religion causes violence? Now, in my opinion, the problem is much bigger than religion. Its genesis goes way beyond the drawing of cartoons. Now, this fellow, I understand, came from, is it Morocco? He came from Morocco, okay? And he isn't someone who's been in France for a long time. He's just a recent resident. And he felt, he was committing this in the name of his religion and beheaded that school teacher and all that. Now, if all eyes are just focused on that individual, you will lose sight of the real cause. And when I say the real cause, I'm talking about an accumulation of historical events that would make a mind behave in such a manner. Now, whatever behavior he did, that was wrong. Okay? But for us to really critically analyze what happened, you need to look at what has led to this kind of a tug of war between Islam and the West. I believe that was in the year, was that 2014 or 2015? I wrote this book. Now, when I was writing this book, many of you local believers would feel like, I don't think I need that book because I already believe in God. The book says, Why I Believe God Exists. Discourse on the Scientific Evidence. And when you look into this book, the first chapter, I devoted the whole chapter on religion and violence. Okay? The first chapter is titled is titled Religion and Violence, What Really Lies Beneath. Now, when you look at the first chapter, the way the book opens up, I quoted words of Dr. Teddy Mlenga. Now, that is a Zambian atheist. He's a doctor, but also equal an atheist. I don't know whether you know Teddy Mlenga. The other time he was on Movie TV, if my memory serves me right. Then I had written a response to the things he was speaking against religion. When I wrote that response, the church newspaper picked up my story and made a headline, and that made Dr. Teddy Mlenga to go on my blog, and he started reading what I had to write, and we exchanged some words, of course in a very mature intellectual way, where I had to tell him why his viewpoints were wrong. I gave him certain questions until he reached a certain point where he said, well, you know what? I have never had it explained the way you've approached it. Okay. Now, this is what he said in his book, The Skeptic. He says, I want you to see how we see certain things happen in the news, we give it a certain analysis, and, well, we'll give a conclusion which seems so correct. But I'll bring certain facts which actually tells you and I that there is a misperception of what's the root cause of this problem and how can it be solved. Now this is what Dr. Mlenga says. Without religion, we would still have the Twin Towers in USA standing. That's a very magnetic statement. It really makes you feel like, oh, that makes sense. There would never have been the fanatical Osama bin Laden, the many civilians dying in the towns of Nigeria at the hands of Boko Haram would be alive today. What about the 200 children abducted in Nigeria and held captive at the hands of a religious fundamentalist group, Boko Haram? Which religion would allow such cruelty? Surely, now listen to what he says, surely God must be having his diary full. He surely deserves a vacation. So what this man is saying is, all these things is because of God, this belief in God, because he is an atheist. He doesn't believe in the existence of God. And in responding to him, I think I published that on the website, on my blog. I said, this seems like a good case against religion, but not factually true. Because, when you see, let's say you look at Osama bin Laden. Now, Osama bin Laden is credited to have created what terror group? Al-Qaeda. You've heard about that, isn't it? Oh, so you say, oh, yes, Osama bin Laden is an Islamist. He was doing all he was doing because of Islam. And he went, slammed his planes into the Twin Towers. Now, if you try to analyze that on the surface like that, those words seem correct, but it is not true. All you need to do is to do a little reading. You can even read the first chapter in my book. I've written why I strongly disagree. All this thing has to be summed up on religion. It is more of political causes than just religion. Religion is part of it, but certainly not the main influencer to the whole thing. Now, if you see one religious person does such a thing, does it mean, all religion in all its forms is bad? That can't be. Because if you turn that around, one person would say, well, if Albert Einstein had not come up with the equation E equals mc squared, we would never have had an atomic bomb, because an atomic bomb came out of that equation, that formula, isn't it? Will you say, okay, I think all science is bad because science made us make bombs out of E equals mc squared, all right? What about, you remember that time when, you don't even need to remember, every now and then we have aircrafts plunging into the sea, killing people. Will you say, well, you know what, aircraft technology is so wrong because it is killing people? That would be a very flawed kind of an analysis. But what would be the reason? What would be the cause? What would cause such kind of fanaticism? There are certain books which may be so enlightening, which you may want to read on that. And the trouble we have is people don't read. You know, they just feed on stuff they read on the internet. But there are a lot of research works which have been done by, professors. Like you can read Stern and Berger. The title of the book is ISIS: The State of Terror. I have a copy in case you want to borrow it. And there's another book called The Great War for Civilization. Very big, thick book, over 1,000 pages. It was done by Robert Fisk, Dr. Robert Fisk. And my favorite one, which was done by Daniel Yergin, it's called The Prize. All right, very enlightening books, and they'll give you an idea of what really goes on. You can also read Confessions of an Economic Hitman by, what is his name again? I can't remember his name. Confessions of an Economic Hitman. He brings out a lot of stuff there. But now, let us pick one case in point and analyze it. How did Al-Qaeda begin? What was the beginning of Al-Qaeda? It did not start as Al-Qaeda in itself. Now, most of us didn't know about Al-Qaeda until the Twin Towers collapsed, and every September 11th, people around the world, they talk about how the Twin Towers fell and all that. But I want to take you a little bit back, and I'm talking about this because it connects with the message we're talking about today about the trumpets. When you go back to the 1970s in Afghanistan, Afghanistan used to be led by a communist government, and of course it was influenced and supported by the Soviet Union. You remember the Soviet Union? Yeah. What today we call what? Russia, right? So Afghanistan used to be led by the Soviet Union. It used to be influenced by the Soviet Union, and so it had a government which was communist in form. And April 1978, that government was overthrown, through a military uprising. It was overthrown. And the new people who took on the government, they even became more oppressive. And they embarked on very radical land reforms, social reforms, wanting to bring about a lot of political reforms. And they were again also directly supported by the Soviet Union. So they were communist. And so you have the Soviet, what you call Russia today, heavily funding this government. But here is what you need to see here. This government was unpopular. Much of the population of Afghanistan are Muslims, and they were anti-communist. They were against what the government was doing. They were against the land reforms. They were against the social reforms which were happening. And they saw this government simply as puppets for communist Soviets, And so what did that do? The people started doing an uprising against this new government, which, was oppressing them, and they felt, we are Muslims, we don't need their social reforms, we don't need the land reforms they're doing, they're just here to get our land, and, So people started to fight back. And this oppressive regime, of course, they responded with force until the Soviets went on ground to attack these people who were doing these uprisings. And these people became more courageous. They called themselves the Mujahideen. You've heard of that term? Mujahideen, meaning we are fighting, what do you call the holy war? What do you call it? Jihad, yeah. We are fighting jihad, and that is what Mujahideen means. And this is the identity they took on themselves. We are fighting jihad. Now, from the simple story I've given you, do you think that confusion was motivated by someone sitting down and reading Torah and saying, you know what, we need to fight jihad? Is that the genesis of the problem? No. What's the genesis of the problem? It's a political economic problem. You understand that? Now, this person has been found to have a certain kind of a belief system. If he was a Hindu, he would have still fought for that, because you see it in India. In India, the Hindus and all that would fight the time there was British occupation. So do you say, oh, the Bhagavad Gita, which these Hindus were reading, is the primary cause? No. The common denominator and factor in all these things is there is a political struggle for land to fight against regimes which are seen to be taking over our land. Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Amen.
Now that plants something in the mind of people, in the social setup and order of the people, okay? So now, I want you to notice how America stepped into this battle. What did USA start doing? USA started getting arms, guns, ammunition, and started supplying it to the Mujahideen, so that this Mujahideen can fight the Soviets. Are you seeing the dirty game at play? And so the Mujahideen started having access to weapons, access to this, to fight. And it became a very costly war for Russia. If you can see what is happening here, it is two big powers fighting each other, and their chessboard is Afghanistan. And the people you see on the ground, called the Mujahideen, called the government, they are simply pawns, bishops, on the political chessboard. But someone with a myopic analysis, all he will see are the black and white boxes on the political chessboard. You are not seeing the players behind it. Now, notice what happened. That should have been in the 1980s or so, when Russia suddenly saw that, I think we're not winning this war. It is causing us to lose a lot of money. And so Russia suddenly, the Soviets suddenly had to pull out of this struggle. Now, when they pulled out, the Mujahideen are happy. Oh, okay, they've gone away now. They've gone away. We've done it. But do you know what happened? When the Russians went out of Afghanistan, that was the beginning of a bigger trouble for the West. And that is where now Osama bin Laden comes into the picture. What you need to know is when the Mujahideens were fighting the Soviets, America supplied the arms, but more importantly, Muslims from different nations and Arabs were also sending their material support. Not just the material support, but a lot of young people, they traveled to Afghanistan to fight for their brothers. So now, at the end of the war, what you have is a team of people coming from different Muslim nations, and the war is over now. But among them were very intelligent people, like Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden is not just some poor, dull guy on the street. He was very educated. So out of that struggle, there is this elite team which comes together. And I get this information from Stern and Becker's book, ISIS, The State of Terror. You need to read that book. These are professors, UK professors, I believe, at some university there, who've done very important research on this matter, what led to the rise of this thing. And what do? They come together, this inner circle. And what do they agree there? They say, you know what? It can't end here. What we need to see here is that the West is our enemy of what is going on here. Most of our people have died and all that. And this inner circle, they call themselves, we are the best, like the foundation of whatever will be happening, to control. And then you have the outer circle, where you have people now who fight with the guns and all that. But then the inner circle was the intelligentsia of this new strategy they're putting up. And this inner circle is what they call the base of whatever they'll be doing. Now, you know what base is in Arabic? Al-Qaeda, meaning the base. Now, does that give you an idea of where Al-Qaeda comes from? You think it came from people sitting down and saying, you know what? The Prophet Muhammad here said this and that, so let us form Al-Qaeda. You think that is how it was formed? No. It is formed out of a struggle. And out of that, they say, let us do this and that. Now, we are not justifying what they did. All I'm giving you is an understanding of what is the genesis of this problem. It's bigger than someone drawing a cartoon. It is bigger than someone trying to fight that person out of the cartoon. It is a whole concoction mixture of disturbed feelings of people which have accumulated over a period of time for feeling like you've oppressed us, you've done damage to our lives. Now, that doesn't justify the violence. But whatever argument you want to have, you need to put things in their proper perspective. And the sooner you realize that, the quicker you realize that it's a more complicated problem than it looks. Because several historical, things have led up to that. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this simply because this is not something you can say religion is evil because it makes someone fly planes and hit the Twin Towers. When you look at quotations I make in this book, there are people who've done very good research, and let me read one statement to you. You can find this in Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins. Yeah, that's the author, John Perkins. John Perkins, in his book on page 190, he describes what happened when the Twin Towers had fallen. Okay? When the Twin Towers had fallen, he went to this place where there was all the debris and, all the rubble and the buildings that collapsed. So when he went there, he met this Arab man. And I want you to observe the conversation they had. Okay? He says, the sights and smells were overwhelming. The incredible destruction, the twisted and melted skeletons of those once great buildings. A man rushed out of an office. He had a scrawny grey beard and wore a grimy overcoat. I knew he was Afghan. He glanced at me. From the way he looked straight ahead, I realized it would be up to me to begin the conversation. Nice afternoon. Beautiful. His accent was thick. Times like these, we want sunshine. You mean because of the World Trade Center? He nodded. You are from Afghanistan? I asked him. He stared at me. Is it so obvious? I answered, I've traveled a lot. Recently, I visited the Himalayas, Kashmir. Kashmir, he put at his beard. Fighting. Yes, India and Pakistan, Hindus and Muslims makes you wonder about religion, doesn't it? Now, this is John Perkins. He tells this man, he says, I'm from Kashmir, and these religious people, they are fighting. Hindus are fighting with Muslims. So he is speaking this to this Muslim man. And the Muslim man is listening. And they're talking about this where the Twin Towers have just collapsed. And obviously, what John Perkins says here must have been what everyone else was thinking, right? So, religion is causing this. Religion is causing this. But I want you to notice here what he says. His eyes met mine. They were deep brown, nearly black. They struck me as wise and sad. He turned back toward the New York Stock Exchange building. Now, the New York Stock Exchange building, that's the heart of business, okay, in America. So now, when John Perkins told the man to say, look at what religion is causing, the man just looked back at him, and what did he do? He pointed at the New York Stock Exchange building. With a long, knobbed finger, he pointed at the building and said, or maybe. I agreed. It's about economics, not religion. So you can say, I fully agree with what John Perkins says. Now that is not to say religion doesn't have a role in it. But if you're going to take religion on its own, then you are leaving out of the equation another very big, important, influential piece that is there. But here it is, the drama of all these ugly events which are characterizing our world it has made unbelievers more stony-hearted to believe in God. They say, oh no, religion is terrible. It makes people violent. Religion is responsible for much of the violence in history. And you know what has been happening? An atheistic world is thriving. Do you know that when you look at countries like England, you look at Europe, even Australia, these used to be very religious countries. Do you know that? Very religious countries. These are countries of men like John Wesley. Very religious countries. But if you were to go there today, I don't know how true it is, but I understand their church buildings are very empty. People rarely have time to go to church. And there used to be a time when men like Charles Darwin, the scientist, when he first released his teaching theory of evolution, people mocked Charles Darwin. When he said human beings, we come from the apes, we come from the animals. People mocked Charles Darwin. You know, there's even a magazine where they drew his face, which looked like a monkey or something like that, like it's him who comes from a monkey. Because at that time, Western society was very much into religion, Christianity. Okay? But over time, you see, there's been a decline of religion, and people believe more in evolution. That is another thing I talk about in this book, why I believe God exists. So you find over time, people started losing faith, in God. They became more materialistic. Until when you go there today in these societies, Western societies, there's more focus on man has become the centerpiece. There isn't, they say the old man in the sky, as they call it. There isn't God. It's you and I who is at the center of the world. And those thoughts have taken center stage. In so much that if you talk about God, you sound so irrational, they say. You are backward. Religion has no place in modern society. And this is the general belief which is there now, Well, America is still religious, but atheism is also on a very sharp rise there. Of course, with Trump plays religion, but the fact is there is quite a big number of people who don't believe in God in America. And the other bad thing is, I see a lot of Christians get excited when they see a politician who seems religious. Maybe they'll hear Trump talk about God and Jesus, and then Christians can get so fanatical about that. You leave that alone. You don't understand the mind of a politician. You understand that? Like here in our country, they were talking about Bhutan. One of the things in Bhutan, they say they want to take the declaration of Zambia as a Christian nation from the preamble of the constitution, because right now it's in the preamble, right? We declare our nation as a Christian nation, blah, blah, blah. And now in the Bhutan, they wanted to take that from the preamble, they want to make it as part of the constitution. And so now, since the Bhutan flopped, it's dead. I was hearing one member of parliament who was in support of the bill, and he was saying, these people who made Bhutan to fail, they are not interested about Zambia being a Christian nation. And wow, I thought, a politician can really twist words and twist your mind with it, because Zambia is still a Christian nation, even without doing revisions to the constitution. And now, if you were to take this declaration of Zambia as a Christian nation from the preamble, I believe the people who did that, they actually had a good reason to put it in the preamble, not to be part of the constitution. They had a very good reason to do that. To begin with, if you put it as part of the constitution, how are you going to enforce it? How will you enforce it? If you say Zambia is a Christian nation by the constitution and you put it inside the constitution, how are you going to enforce it? It's undoable. It's undoable. You can't enforce Christianity. Because when you look at Zambia, they're Muslims, they're Hindus, they're all these things. And starting with the very people who are propagating, because if you want to enforce Christianity as I believe it, I'll tell you, can you close all the taverns? How will you enforce that? Does Christianity allow us to smoke? Does it allow us to smoke cigarettes? Huh? It doesn't. I mean, your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, right? You don't need to defile or... Suppose I say, can you close all tobacco companies? Ain't we enforcing Christian values now? Let us enforce them. Let us close tobacco industry and all that, and people shouldn't smoke and all that. Now, will those be good things? Yes, by my Christian belief, it would be a very good thing to do. Will it be practical in our political setup? It won't be practical. It won't be practical. Because the way Zambia is very different with the way Israel used to be. Israel was a theocracy. Words of a prophet will be given more respect, even more than words of a king. You understand that? But that is not our setup here. That is why certain countries like Singapore, they've managed how to let religions coexist without putting religion in their constitution, because that can be a recipe of trouble, you know. Of course, other people have a different opinion to that. But one thing is this sense. One thing is this. The world has become so atheistic. It has become so full of... It's the mind of human beings at the center of it, with very little of God in it. People trust more about what projections they can make, what plans they have, how they want to better human society. This is the picture of the world you have, and the Jews are no exception. Actually, they could be the ones who are far ahead in such things. Because, for example, if you talk about homosexuality and lesbianism, you know, one of the freest countries where homosexuality can be freely practiced and you even celebrate these people, you know that is in Israel. You know that, isn't it? Yeah. When there's even this day where you honor lesbians and homosexuals, the prime minister will even have an address to wish all the lesbians and gays, for them to have a happy celebration. I heard Benjamin Netanyahu the other time doing that, when it was a day like that. Because being a politician, you have to make everyone happy who is in your country. Now, do you think Israel is in a state that God desired it to be? Certainly, it is not, And the temple is not with them. But here's one thing I need to tell you. Yes, the Jews have been returning to that nation. God brought about the birth of the nation of Israel in 1948. But the most important thing is yet to take place in that nation. Why? The temple is not yet there. And this leads us to talk about the trumpets. Now, what is the purpose of a trumpet and what does it do? Now, let us go to Isaiah 18. Saints, I want you to realize that when the Bible speaks about the great day of the Lord before Jesus Christ comes, it will be a great and dreadful day of the Lord. You need to know that God is going to take up this whole world and shake it up. And that is going to arouse everyone's consciousness to see the world in a very different way than we've always gotten used to see it. Before God closes up the world as we know it to be, God will have to blow a trumpet and call us to attention. Because right now everyone is doing his own thing, right? Human rights. There is no God. And many times God can keep quiet over something for a very long period of time, and that doesn't mean he's not watching what is going on. Remember Sodom and Gomorrah lived for such a very long period of time until God stepped up and said, this has to be brought to an end. Now let us read Isaiah 18 verse 3. Now when you read Leviticus 23, it tells you of the Feast of Trumpets. And we know how Jesus fulfilled the first 4 feasts. By one of these days, the 5th feast, which is the Feast of Trumpets, is going to start rolling out. Now let us see what is the meaning of a trumpet. Isaiah 18 verse 3. Isaiah 18 verse 3. Isaiah 18 verse 3. Shall we all read? All ye inhabitants of the world and dwellers on the earth, see ye when he lifteth up an ensign on the mountains, and when he bloweth a trumpet, hear ye. Now you see here a prophecy talking about some great thing God is going to do, and he will lift up that ensign on the mountains, and a trumpet to be blown. For what purpose? To arouse attention. Now, you know, before a trumpet blows, everyone is doing his own thing. Everyone is doing his own activity. But when a trumpet blows, it makes everyone cease what they're doing. When that blows, whatever you are doing, you stop. Now, the way it is sounding, if I were to ask you, what is the meaning of that? All you are hearing is doo, doo, doo. You can't make a meaning out of that. But to those in Israel, they know what that means with a particular sound it would produce. In these biblical days, they were trained to understand what does that mean. But one thing is this: whatever sound it was a call to attention, a call to assemble, a call to a certain action, meaning stop what you are doing, there is a message. Now, if you don't know what the sound means, it means you can't hear a message out of that sound. But if you know what it means, your ears were trained, it means to you that sound of the trumpet is not just a sound, but it has a voice, it has a message. And here we read that all ye inhabitants of the world. Now, what God is going to do here is not just something for the nation of Israel. Yes, he is doing it using Israel, but it is something for which he is going to draw the attention of the world as well. All ye inhabitants of the world and dwellers on the earth, see ye when he lifteth up an ensign on the mountains, and when he bloweth a trumpet, hear ye. Verse 5. Now, before we read verse 5, you remember the scripture we read in the last sermon? When the Lord Jesus said, don't you say it is 4 months yet and then the harvest comes. Do you remember that? And you know that the first 4 feasts which were fulfilled, they took place in those first months. They are called the spring feasts. Now, after the day of Pentecost, after Pentecost, how many days before the Feast of Trumpets? 120 days. How many months is that? 4 months. Exactly the way the Lord Jesus had said, don't you say it's 4 months and then before the harvest. What kind of a harvest are we talking about? Now, you know that the rapture will be a gathering of what all the work God has done through the church ages, through the different church ages. God is going to harvest his people, and it will be signaled by a resurrection from the dead. While God gets the harvest of these Gentiles, he turns his focus to the Jews. And in verse 5 you read, for afore the harvest, when the bud is perfect, and the sour grape is ripening in the flower, he shall both cut off the sprigs with pruning hooks, and take away and cut down the branches. Wow. Now, you know that you and I were grafted into the olive tree, right? Yeah. We were never part of this Abraham's covenant. But when the Lord Jesus Christ came, he took you and I, a Gentile, and grafted us in. But a time is coming when the trumpet shall be blown. And when that happens, That will be the end of it. Gentiles which are unprofitable. Gentiles who wouldn't have merit for the rapture. God chops off the branch. Because now he's blowing the trumpet. And this trumpet is blowing. It is going to shake up this whole world. It is an atheistic world, materialistic world. But I want you to know that when the rapture takes place, the rapture we were talking about last Sunday, when the rapture takes place, God is going to call the world to attention. What kind of attention? The world climate is going to change at a very unprecedented rate. Certain cosmic disturbances are going to happen, and they'll start from that very world, the Middle Eastern world. And after 3.5 years, this cosmic disturbance begins to spread everywhere. And everyone is going to know that life is no longer the same the way we got used to it. Those with eyes to see, they'll know there is a creator. Now, these things are not just going to be happening on their own. No. God is going to do something. God is going to raise up. It's not just one trumpet which will be blowing. There will be 2 trumpets which will blow. And these 2 trumpets will have a message. Now, let us read Numbers 10 verse 1. Numbers chapter 10 verse 1. Numbers 10 verse 1 to verse 2. I want us all to read that. Praise the Lord. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Make thee 2 trumpets of silver, of a whole piece shalt thou make them, that thou mayest use them. For what purpose? For the calling of the assembly, and for the journeying of the camels. Verse 10. Also in the day of your gladness. Verse 10. Also in the day of your gladness, and in your solemn days, and in the beginnings of your months, ye shall blow with the trumpets over your burnt offerings, and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings, that they may be to you for a memorial before your God. I am the Lord your God. Praise the Lord, amen. Now, how many trumpets, how many silver trumpets?
2.
2 trumpets, right? Now that is a type of what begins to happen in Israel after the rapture has taken place. What is happening? There are 2 prophets who rise in Israel. I'm not going to go into all the details because there is a message where I spoke about this. You can go on the website and listen to the message where I talk about the 2 prophets. But here is one thing. We read about these 2 prophets in Revelation chapter 11. Can we please go there? Revelation chapter 11. Verse 3. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 candlesticks. Does that sound familiar? Where did we last read that? Where did we last read that? About the 2 olive trees. Where did we last read that? Come on, are you here? Let me read again. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 candlesticks standing before the God of the earth. Does that sound familiar? Where did we read that? In the vision of Zechariah. That is in the vision of Zechariah. What did Zechariah see? He saw 2 olive trees. And the angel told him, these are the 2 anointed ones, isn't it? Now here is the question. When you read this prophecy, as it begins in verse 1, and there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood saying, rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and them that worship therein. This is John seeing the vision. When did he write this vision? In the year 96 AD. Now can I ask you something? In the year 96 AD, is there a temple in Israel? No, there isn't. When was it destroyed? 70 AD. The temple was destroyed. It's no longer in Israel. So, but here John sees a temple in his vision. And that tells you and I, there shall be a third temple in Israel. And as John sees this vision, he actually sees descriptions of a temple. That tells you and I, there is a third temple to come. Now, when Ezra, Zechariah, Haggai built that temple, there was a prophecy. The glory of this latter temple shall be greater than the former. Right. And you know it is God who inspired them to build that temple. Now we know that because of their unbelief, whatever work could have done among them, it was cut short. God erased the temple out. But is that the end of the story? It can't be the end of the story. Because somewhere in prophecy God says, God will never forget the Israelites. He says, forgetting Israel will amount to God removing all the ordinances and the laws that makes this whole universe work. So that tells you and I, God still has it in his mind to press on play the story that he had paused. Now when he paused the story, there was a temple in Jerusalem. But it got destroyed and everything. And after the rapture, the story has to replay. How does it replay? There has to be the building of the temple, the way it was in the times of Ezra. How does the story replay? There has to be the two prophets again come. The way you had Haggai, the way you had Zechariah. You remember that? The two anointed ones. We see the two prophets again in Israel. And what are these two prophets doing? They have a message to the nation of Israel. They're giving prophecies. And as they're speaking that, there is 144,000 Jews who get sealed by the message these men speak. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses have all their theology around that. The 144,000, these are men who will hear the message of the two prophets. Shall we read about them? I'll be concluding soon. I'll be concluding soon. Just give me 10 more minutes. Revelation chapter 7. And after these things, I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth. Now, four corners of the earth does not mean the earth has four corners. It's a flat earth and it has four corners. No. It tells you a place where the west meets the east, where the south meets the north. It tells you about that centerpiece of the world, and that is none other than the Middle East world. The Middle East world. Okay? After these things, I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth. What are these winds of the earth? Economic winds, military winds, political winds, okay? And these are things which every now and then, they almost lead the world into a third world war. But there are these angels who are holding back. They are pulling these winds back. But a time is going to come when God says it is time for the world to now go through its final last days. And the whole thing is going to take 7 years. That the wind should not blow on the earth, nor the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the four angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. All right? Now, this does not mean there's going to be a physical sign written on people's foreheads. No. They are being sealed by the Holy Spirit, by the message being preached by the two prophets. As the two prophets are preaching, great disturbances haven't yet started. But there are certain things which begin to happen, because when the two prophets begin their ministry, the spiritual trumpets begin to blow. And you can find those trumpets in Revelation 8. The first trumpet blows and certain disturbances begin to happen, cosmic disturbances. It affects agriculture, it affects the climate and all that. And those are the prophecies which are being spoken by the two prophets. You can read them in Revelation chapter 11. But whatever is happening, God tells the four angels, do not yet release the four winds for this to lead into the catastrophe. Do not yet do that, because God is still sealing people who can believe the message of these two prophets. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and they were sealed in 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. If Jehovah's Witnesses think they are the 144,000, you need to tell them, are you part of Benjamin, the tribe of Levi, and all that? The 144,000 has got nothing to do with the Gentile. These are coming from the 12 tribes of Israel. Amen. Of the tribe of Judah were sealed 12,000, and so on, the list goes on. So what you see here is the sealing taking place, but here it is. When the two prophets die and God raises them, their ministry would have taken place for the first 3.5 years. The next 3.5 years, which will mark 7 years in total, the next 3.5 years is the beginning of what you call the Great Tribulation. And when the Great Tribulation takes place, you have 3 angels' messages now taking effect. Now let us go to Revelation chapter 14. Revelation 14. What you see in Revelation 14 are the 144,000 taking the message which was given to them by the two prophets. They are now taking it to the world, wherever they're going. Whichever place they're going to. The 144,000. Revelation 14. And I looked, and lo, a Lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. So they're on Mount Zion. Where is Mount Zion? It is on earth. But as John sees this vision, his attention goes heavenward now. And I heard a voice from heaven as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps, and they sang as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders, and no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. Now, that doesn't mean they are physical virgins. This is a spiritual language to mean these men, their beliefs, their faith has been untainted by the religious systems of this world, by denominationalism. They have that spiritual virgin faith, okay? And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. Now listen, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, and this is where my attention is. Having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. Now, there is an angel here who is flying with an everlasting gospel. Now, you know that an angel, God never uses angels to preach. An angel is a spiritual being, okay? But he manifests that ministry through human beings who are here on earth. And which people are on earth? It's the 144,000. And what is the message? The message is not doctrinal or anything like that. It's a very simple message, which is happening in that great tribulation period of the world. What is the message? Saying with a loud voice, in verse 7, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. You can see that the message they have, it is something that hits against that atheistic spirit, that communistic spirit that has put man at the center of everything. And the message that goes out during the Great Tribulation is fear God. And as that is being proclaimed, this is not a time of divine healing, miracles, the lame walking. No. If there's a miracle which happens this time is prophecies of no rain. And then there is a global climatic disturbance which is happening. And there are these voices going about telling people you need to believe in God. There is a God and you need to fear him. Praise God. Amen. And what is God going to do? Why would God do that? Simply because as you live in this time, the world is so atheistic, communistic, putting man at the center of everything. And as the world begins to shake up, it is going to be in the conscience of people to say, life has changed. It's no longer the way it used to be. Just look at how the corona pandemic has done. You remember when it just struck the world? Oh my. We could not work. Imagine how an economy of a world which was strong and it was running and it was just within a short time, it began to collapse. Now, and some people already started preaching, the judgment of God, the judgment of God, oh my. If just the tip of a simple pandemic has shaken the world like this, what do you think the ministry of the two prophets and the 144,000 is going to do to this world? Life won't be as we know it to be, because we are going to have very strange events which are going to shake the political establishment, which are going to shake the natural world. And those who have ears to hear, they are going to see that this is not the same world that I've grown up to live in. Others, it's going to harden their hearts. Others, they're going to say, you know what, I think there's God and we've lost it somewhere and we need to go back on our knees in repentance. What is God doing? It is the trumpets blowing, calling humanity to the attention of God. More importantly, God is focusing on the nation of Israel. But if there be any Gentiles who hear and the word impacts them, well and good. But God is going to do this thing with Israel at the center of it. You're going to have Jews who are going to listen to the message and it will touch their hearts and they'll know that no, we need to go back to the ways of God. We've allowed and tolerated so many things which are ungodly. And out of that element, now, when you look at the Great Tribulation, it is going to be so troublesome. It will be God like taking people through a fire. And by the time the 7 years are done, the complete 70th week of Daniel is going to be done, God is going to come up with an element of people that have been purified. And he will preserve them to repopulate the world during the 1,000 years, because a lot of human beings are going to die during this 7 years period. Shall we stand?